PartnerUp. We're back. Got Isaac in the chair, back in Tennessee, no longer in person after Scott Brinker, the godfather of MarTech, now heading ecosystem at HubSpot. So that one went live. If you haven't checked it out, it's amazing. And now we have kind of at the center of all things partner ecosystem for a very special episode.
The big 5-0.
Number 50, we got on Chris from Partnerships Leaders and Crossbeam. Of course, you all know Crossbeam. So what's up, Chris?
Man, it's so good to be here. Massively honored that I get to do the episode 50 with y'all. So thank you.
Yeah, totally. It was, I want to say that it was planned, but then I kind of looked at everything. I'm like, wait, Chris is going to be number 50. So salute, cheers. I will be partaking in that over the episode. It's my first one though, so I won't get too rowdy.
Well, I was only able to acquire a decaf Americano, which this late in the day, that might do some stuff to me too. I don't know. It might get me pretty
decaf Americano.
Got my hotel water going crazy.
Hotel water. All right, so I'm the only person celebrating 50. But episode 50 of PartnerUp, man. I'm excited to have Chris here and talk about, I think the thing that's nearest and dearest to my heart, which is tech, peer-to-peer tech partnerships. So Chris, you've seen a lot of this at Crossbeam, given the intersects and intersections that kind of are created between companies connecting up their databases from, hey, should we do a partner thing together, all the way to massive scale, right? Like, oh, we have thousands and thousands of relationships and overlaps and segments and all sorts of stuff. So you've kind of got to see the gambit a little bit as this has emerged. And I've also been a customer. So I've seen this happen, like, oh, wow, whenever we get to see the data, here's what we can do together, and had hundreds of sellers in joint Slack channels that wouldn't have otherwise happened. So I think today we wanted to unpack, what's this wild world of peer-to-peer tech partnerships? Because it's like the big dogs, they have their standard process, but for the rest of us that are kind of in hyper growth trying to partner up or partner down, it seems like the playbook is still being written. We're building the plane as we fly it, so to speak. So let's kick off there. Isaac, I think I liked your entry point in terms of like, we can kind of go through that maturity of like the upstart kind of scaling with peers to becoming the platform. Let's start with kind of your thesis, what you're most interested in, which would be how do we test that minimally viable partnership, and how does, data or overlap or things like that play into that if at the entry point?
No, that's always been super interesting to me. Again, I've worked with mostly very early, smaller companies. And so the thought of partnerships, it's like this big, hairy, involved thing with lots of moving parts and a high level of commitment. And it's like, you got to set up a bunch of stuff. It might involve, product and all these other things. So I'm always looking as kind of the lean startup model background for like, how do you pressure test this? What's the minimum way that you can see if there's a there? And so I'm curious if you have like best practices or examples, Chris, from your own or even from customers of yours that you've seen where you identify possible partnerships. Hey, maybe there's something there. What's that like baby step to really see how much is worth investing and going more deeply to do something that's a much more involved thing? What does that minimum test look like?
Yeah, totally. So this is something that we've been spending a lot of time at Crossbeam on, just really doing this ourselves. And we have a whole partner program that is obviously working with a lot of other tech companies. I feel a little fortunate that we have a lot of partner teams that are our customers, because it does make the conversation easier around, okay, cool, how do we take our two solutions and bring them together? But I think in any of my companies I worked in the past, I've been with Optimizely, Full Story. A lot of it came from customer feedback, so like being as close as possible to what the market needs, and then trying to figure out, is there kind of a V1 of any technical integration, or even before that, going and doing some joint marketing together in the market and just seeing if it resonates. I think this is one of the things that we definitely... Caroline just came back. Sorry, hang on one second.
Oh, all good. Do we cut it or do we not cut it? That's the question.
Yeah. How real do we want to keep this? Listeners, I think they like keeping it real.
I think so too. I don't know. We'll let Chris be the ultimate. So for those of you who don't know Chris, Chris is the VP of partnerships at Crossbeam. So they were, an early supporter of the podcast, the first 10 episodes, and software that we've definitely evangelized a ton. So, and then also for those of you who aren't members of Partnerships Leaders, it's the kind of premier paid member community. So we're giving you the mid-roll shout out and plugs, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you. It's good. Yeah, good to be here, guys. So
So you were kind of giving us the backstory on how you kind of like dog food MVP partnerships, given your partnerships company working with partnerships people. You might have some theses to get to that minimally viable partnership a little bit sooner than other companies that might not have that much concentric circles of like partner overlap. Let's unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is like I think one of the things that separates some of the like more agile, newer maybe partner teams or just philosophies around how to do partnerships. I've experienced both sides of it where you talk to a partner and they're like, I want this territory carved out, or I want exclusivity, or those types of things before they invest resources. I think like the nature of a lot of these SaaS solutions is that we can relatively quickly probably get an MVP integration together, or at least test in the market some co-marketing initiatives and see if it resonates, and let that momentum sort of guide you on how much you invest energy into the partnership. We've been trying to be very thoughtful, even at Crossbeam, as we go into a lot of these tech partnerships, not creating, tiering in our partner program yet, or like targets for any of our partners or anything. It's really just like, let's get a legal framework in place that like, an NDA, mutual NDA. Let's make sure that you can access our APIs and vice versa. If we find that integration, but make that as low friction as humanly possible, because you want to get into the mode of like actually getting market feedback from your customers about like, is this something they're interested in? And we've had to beta test this a ton at Crossbeam because nobody's ever had programmatic partner data before. So we have all these like categories of integrations, and some of them didn't resonate as well as we would have hoped. Other ones are taking off really, really quickly, but you kind of don't know until you start getting out there in the market and talking to people about it. So I think that's one thing just to take away is like, figure out with your legal team how to make any kind of agreement with your partners as lightweight as humanly possible in the beginning. And then in some scenarios, like even before you get into an official partner agreement, talk to some mutual customers. You can use things like Crossbeam and other tools to like spot those overlaps so that you can actually go and talk to those customers. And sometimes the market tells you like, that doesn't matter to us. And so not to spend energy on that, or you revise your hypothesis around what use case of an integration you might want to do with a tech partner.
So two examples are popping in my mind of things I've experienced myself that you're really reminding me of, because when you said start with marketing, I love that idea that like marketing is almost like your first lowest cost way to test out a partnership before you have to commit to something on the product side or whatever. And so I was thinking of a test with a B2C company I was running in the career space, where somebody came to us and said, hey, we're scaling up this massive sales force of SDRs, and we want to see with all these job seekers you have, you guys have a lot of first-time seekers. Can you feed us a lot of, talent for this? And we came up with this idea, and it was this really like complex thing we wanted to do, where we're like sourcing the talent and sort of training them up and then placing them in and basically saying, this is your first startup job. So we had this idea, and we thought, well, before we go crazy, let's just do something really simple. Let's just go buy the domain joinsiliconvalley.com, and let's just make a landing page, and let's just spend like a week and like $500 on a little bit of targeted, and see if the audiences that we've already defined for other stuff, are they motivated by this idea of join a Silicon Valley startup? And it's a good thing we tested that, because it turns out they weren't. It was like right at the beginning of the pandemic, and people didn't want to move to Silicon Valley. And it was not clicking at all, even though there was things about what we wanted to build that I think had promise. We just being able to test for like $500 and in like a couple days, a landing page. And then another analogy on the product side, I had a developer who I was working with, and I was talking about a feature that I thought would be really valuable. And he's like, well, what if we did this? What if we just put a button there that says what the feature is, click here to do X. I don't remember what it was, but we don't actually support it. And all that happens when you click it is says, we haven't launched this feature yet. Give us your email to be the first to hear about it. And then we'll find out how many people click on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so simple. We can let the customer tell us if they really actually want us to build this feature. So that's what you're making me think of. These are hacks. It's partner hacking, right?
Yeah, that's 100% true. The lightweight stuff that you can get that market feedback and quickly determine, like, is this resonating or not? It's just going to save you so much time and energy. Because if it does work, then you have ammo to go to all the other people in your organization on the marketing side or engineering side, et cetera, to be like, there's something here. Like, we should probably explore doing something more with this organization. And it's fascinating as we've gone into some partnerships where the other party is not maybe interested in trying out the lightweight approach. They want to go the big heavy one. And I'm like, today that's just not in the cards. Like, we're moving as quickly as possible because the market's brand new and we don't know what's going to resonate or not.
And going big means, I think whenever someone says going big and they mention the word partner, I immediately think of alliance. An alliance has other things, right? So we're talking full product build, probably some commits around go-to-market, commercials, marketing, sales, right? There are revenue implications to both companies. If you're a bigger company, then some of that revenue should be retirable, right? It should be recognizable revenue even. So these are things like minimum commits, which that's a whole other level of conversation. I wanted to tie this together with a concept that I was just talking to someone yesterday about. So Brent Adamson. Brent is the author of the Challenger Sale. He authored a very, very unique piece in HBR a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, that we covered in the Partner Hacker Daily. So there's my plug. If you're not getting Partner Hacker Daily, go sub. It's the only partner newsletter that has like a 60% open rate. Yeah, go sub.
I'll do like a subliminal, like late night DJ voice to channel Chris Voss. Just sign up for Partner Hacker Daily. Just every once in a while.
So I was talking with Brent yesterday, and you know what he told me? That just like, I'm going to repeat this 1,000 times now. He said that I feel like everyone in B2B right now has a crisis of conviction. And that brought it to attention is because what most partner people, whenever they approach a partner conversation, kind of like at this stage, how do we do something MVP? No one really has conviction. It's like, I want your leads, and then you want my leads. That's really the baseline by which people are starting most partner conversations, is how do we generate more leads? So if a company's much smaller than you, the benefits are clearly outsized, right? But if you're about the same size, what is the partner value hypothesis that you're willing to hang your career hat on, right? What's your conviction? That's what I see people lacking, is they're not coming in and being like, hey, Chris, here's my value hypothesis. And it is detailed to the nth degree. We're going to knock this out of the park. And you're not reviewing some plan that's like, holy cow, this is actually amazing. What you're typically seeing, what I typically see is, how do we partner with you and get your leads, without saying it that way, right? So like, there's this lack of conviction that's underpinning all buyer behavior right now. Heck, even personal behavior. Amazon's save for later button. Do you know, this is some stuff I'm dropping right here that I just can't wait to put in some further on research. Do you know that Amazon's save for later button has seen like a 4,000% increase in the past 2 years? Isn't that wild? Why? Because like we have too much stuff. Like, we can't even decide if we want to buy the thing that we're researching ourselves. So when it comes to partnerships, you better have some conviction. Here's why we want to do the thing. So tell me that, Chris, like, if you're seeing very strong conviction in like a proposal, is that norm, or is it normally like more, hey, let's see if we should do a partnership. Let's explore things. Let's kind of dance around the subject because we're not really sure. We don't know. We don't have conviction.
I think this is an interesting one because, like, in the world of like kind of tech partner to tech partner relationships, a lot of your sort of early efforts are going to be around potentially mutual customers. And that gives you the referenceable content to be able to go out, and it starts to build the relationships, honestly, between your AEs and CSMs. So then you can transition into the mode of, okay, we know each other, let's help each other get into open opportunities. And eventually it transitions into, okay, I'm going to help you do marketing campaigns to net new customers for both of us, or net new accounts for both of us, the prospects. And so like I sort of see it as like gradients of like start with the lowest friction area where it's like it's mutual customers. They're already working with both of us. We just need to get them to buy into the idea that our two solutions together would create value for them. And so I think that's like
Well, so when you
it's
say
hard.
buy-in, listen, when you say buy-in, I would assume that's based on some feedback. It would be great if X did Y with Z, right? So if I could do this thing with you and with the software I'm already using.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where you, to some extent, it's good to go into these conversations with a, both the tech partners should have a sort of use case or a few use cases they think might be viable. And in some cases, you may not broach those until you've gotten customer feedback first because you don't want to sort of tip their hand on what you're thinking because sometimes they can come up with some stuff that you never even thought of. But at some point during the conversation, you want to look prepared and have something to say, hey, here's some ideas we have. Like, would this resonate? Would this be something your team would get value from? Would you potentially upgrade your plan? Whatever the conversation needs to lead to make it feel like you have enough confidence, across that customer and potentially multiple to be like, all right, the market's telling us that there's something here. Like, we should devote some energy into actually building it. I think an area where tech partners sometimes miss, and I've been on calls this year where this has happened, where they see our 7,500 customers on Crossbeam and they're like, they come into the conversation. They're like, I have no idea what use case we could potentially do with you guys. I just want to do like marketing with you, and it's like,
Right.
that's not a great way to start those conversations because it's like we have all our APIs exposed, developers.crossbeam.com. We have tons of marketplace listings, even potentially companies in your category. Like, do the homework before you go into those calls. I think like there's a difference between like agile partnering and being prepared for that conversation.
Right.
Where it's like we're all crazy busy. You have 30 minutes, and I feel the same way. Like I need to make sure that in that small amount of time, I can convince the person across the table that we should move into that MVP status and do those activities to validate we should be working together. But I think showing up to these calls and not having some sense of what you might want to do together is probably just going to lead to a miss on both sides.
I like
Totally.
this. This is an interesting combination of like, okay, yes, you start with some minimal viable thing, and you can do that really early, really cheaply to kind of figure out what's there. But you don't just randomly do that. You only do that where you have a value proposition for something much more extensive, and you say, look, I think there's something really deep here, and we've done the research, we found it. This MVP that we're doing is very strategic, and if depending upon the results we get when we're testing this hypothesis, it tiers up to something much more involved. It's not just like a random, well, let's just start doing some co-marketing together just for the heck of it and see what happens. I see. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely tell folks like, hey, like there is a litany of things we will continue to invest more and more over time to do with y'all, whether it's joint blog posts, social promotions, AE to AE enablement sessions. Like there's this like, it's good to think about for your own tech company, what is that laundry list of stuff that you can deploy to support your partners? But we don't figure all that stuff up front. We know what we can deploy. It's sort of like you move through those phases of kind of figuring out, and sometimes it's a culture fit. It's not even a technical fit. It's like, does the other party actually operate in a way that you do? We live in Slack Connect. That is how we communicate with most of our key tech partners. If you're not using Slack Connect and you're just using email, it's going to go a lot slower, and it's just the nature of it. And I think other organizations are obviously very different, but this is where that kind of like, what's the operating rhythm of how you work together? We're also kind of figuring that out in these early stages.
100%. I think what's really interesting is going back to the conviction point, what you just said, Chris, is identifying those value add things, not just from the perspective of the company, but from the people that it affects. So you mentioned, AE to AE, like, hey, can we do some joint, intros, or like just kind of, can we work together from a sales process standpoint? Can we work together from a co-marketing standpoint? I find that where a lot of people get hung up is they might be able to have some thesis for the companies, like, hey, here's how an integration could work. Okay, cool. An integration could work X or Y way. But who's really being impacted at those companies? So I'll give you an example. And I'd love to hear if you have some of these things that where you could diagnose too. So I've told this story many times, but like PandaDoc and HubSpot before there was even APIs for CRM, right? We hacked a Chrome extension for HubSpot CRM for PandaDoc, and we ended up measuring what was the most important thing for a HubSpot CRM customer becoming paid, which was moving a deal to closed won. That inflection point was 7 times more likely than any other indicator, right? So we tied ourselves to that, but that wasn't enough. Then we went in person to meet with all of the new HubSpot for sales account executives and explain that to them, right? Because they're doing a PLG motion, right? They only have so many levers to get a close, but if they could help them get to a close one deal in CRM, they were 7 times more likely to close their deal. And I could extrapolate this under multiple situations where we're Marketo and Drift. The most important metric for Marketo at that point was net dollar retention, how many contacts are in the database. So that made the CSM really care about what we were doing, right? We went into the CSM and said, hey, how do you get more contacts into your customer's database? Well, I don't really control that. Well, guess what? Now you do.
Yeah, this
Right.
this kind of stuff is so key. What is the other party across the business, CSMs, marketing? What are
Right.
their goals? And this is kind of like that later stage of like you start to really explore the motivators behind your partner and even the partner manager. Like what moves the needle for them? Sometimes it's not revenue. Sometimes they're at the stage of I just need activity or I need leads or whatever it might be. And this is an area that I think sometimes actually I think back to the Challenger sale when we got that training. Sometimes your partner has goals that may not be the thing that actually is going to move the needle for them. So like we are all figuring out this partnerships thing and it's constantly evolving. And so sometimes like getting into a conversation with your fellow partner manager sitting across the table and you're like, okay, you guys are doing X, Y, and Z. Like I can help you move the needle in these ways. Have you thought about measuring your program that way? Have you, like where are you guys at in your journey of building your partner program? Because you look across the space and there's tons of new heads of partnerships that were previously partner managers. That there's just so much demand right now for building new programs. It's kind of the wild, wild west out there. So I think like going into these conversations with a bit of empathy of like where they're at in their journey and like thinking through like, can we help you right now? Is there things we can help you with later on? It still comes down to, I think, a human connection, I think, behind a lot of this. So to your point earlier around like, yes, we have a technical integration, there's value for the customers, but you need somebody who's going to be sitting across the table. It's going to fight and block and tackle inside the business
Right.
to
What's in it
make
for
your
them?
partnership the most important thing that the company's working on.
That's always been my secret formula is find out the company's North Star most important objective as it relates to that product line or SKU that you impact, and then how the most people at the company, whether it's a CSM or an AE, how they and their compensation and their success metrics relate to that, and can I impact that more than any other partner? If my answer is yes, I win that, and it's an alliance, and I go in with conviction, and it's a big deal. And then downstream from that, there's probably 5, 10, 15, 20 other smaller scale players that we can kind of integrate with and tell a similar story, right? So if that's in CRM, if that's in marketing automation, if that's in forecasting, if that's in data warehousing, like you name the category, if I can go win that with someone that's most important to me, I can also win it with the players underneath.
Totally. Yeah, there's like it's interesting. I literally just took the G2 like list of categories and I exported all of them and I was like, could I imagine sending Crossbeam data to that thing? And it just like marked off on this huge multi-hundred category list. And that's how we sort of initially came up with like our rather large target list. And then I went down and I was like, okay, well, do I know anybody at these companies? Like I used PartnerBase to figure out how big their partner network was. I looked at LinkedIn to figure out, did they have a partner team? And you can sort of get these signals around like, okay, they don't have a partner team. They don't have any like developer API stuff online. They probably don't have APIs for me to do anything with them, even though they're in the right category.
That was a low key drop right there, by the way, which we just discovered this the other day. Chris was PartnerBase, and I was like, what the heck is this? And we were going back and forth, and I'm like, wait a second, that's powered by Crossbeam. Okay, dope. I love those types of freemium kind of like tools. So by the way, amazing resource. I'm going to plug that because it is great. Partnerbase.com. It's kind of like I don't know. How does that work, Chris, by the way?
How does it work?
Right?
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
actually Crossbeam data. So like it is
Wow.
actually it's us going out and finding all of as many companies as we can possibly find the publicly available information about who their partners are. So there's, both channel companies as well as tech companies, or service organizations as well as tech companies on that list. And there's some cool enhancements coming soon to it. But yeah, like I use this tool myself to kind of like figure out like who's my target tech partners and can I actually work with them? And so we sort of like figure out prioritization wise which ones are probably the least amount of effort to get into a good conversation that we could actually build an integration with, and actually do all the kind of go to market activities. But it's like I try to make things as efficient as possible because I don't want to spend a bunch of time doing lots and lots and lots of research when we have all these amazing tools like Partnerbase and LinkedIn, and you can use Crossbeam, you can use other tools like that to kind of figure out like who should I be working with potentially.
I've seen some kind of tool. I can't find it. I was just trying to Google it, where you can go look up companies and see what SaaS tools they use.
Built with.
What's their stack? Is that built with? Okay, that's
yeah.
Right.
There's built with.
Datanyze used to exist too, but they got acquired by ZoomInfo.
There's a bunch of these like sort of solutions. Discover Org's another one that companies buy, where you have, especially for like JavaScript based SaaS solutions, you can go and scan and see all the ones out there. The only downside is at larger companies, they may have multiple pieces of JavaScript for the same tech category because somebody's afraid of breaking the website and they're just like, we're just going to leave that there. And so sometimes you'll see like 3 competing products in the same.
Eloqua, HubSpot, and Marketo tags on the site, and you're like, they might actually be using all 3 across different business units.
That's when you get those emails that say, I noticed that you've been using X. And I'm like, no, I don't use X. This is not a good sales tactic.
Yeah, that's this is I think the future of kind of the marketing organization actually is blending that like third-party data of like things that you buy and you have a hypothesis of what's in their technology stack. And then you have like first-party data, obviously, which is things that you collect. And then you have second-party data, which is things like Crossbeam and other solutions in our space, where it's like...
Hold on, real quick. You said second-party data. I've been down the rabbit hole on third-party data and cookies and all of that, given we had Drift and 6 Sense, demand-based Clearbit, like all of this stuff happening, off-site for retargeting. There's a debate as to whether second-party is even a thing, like legally. Do you have a point of view that like second party data is a thing? There's an argument that it's either third party or it's first party. I'm just curious your take.
Yeah, I mean, this is to some extent, this is what Crossbeam data is. It is your partner's relationships with B2B accounts. It's based on my network. Can I see that they are a customer of some company? And it is an interesting data stream because it's very accurate to some extent, because it's like it's the CRM data of my partner. They're probably not lying, because if they are, it would really mess up the way they operate their sales organization and customer success team. We've seen now some of our tech partners in the marketing space especially start to evangelize this concept of using second party data to do very, very targeted messaging and campaigns. So like the ABM solutions especially are thinking a lot about this, because first party data is getting harder to capture. Third party data is potentially getting more expensive or more spotty in some ways. And so you have to have, I think, a strategy as a marketing org to blend all 3 things together to really do kind of really effective marketing campaigns now. This is like early innings here.
So I really agree with you on what you just said. I think right now, one of the reasons that Partnerships is having a moment and why this is so exciting is because of the attack, and probably deservedly so, on third-party cookies, right? So, things like this that can generate more fruitful or interesting conversations with your CMO. Like if you're a head of partner or just a partner manager, then you could go talk to your product marketer and, hey, let's do some partner marketing. Whether you're an IC or you're a leader, being able to speak intelligently about what's happening to marketing as the elimination of third-party cookies and that kind of data is disappearing. Let's not mince words on how impactful this is. Facebook lost $12 billion in revenue, not valuation, revenue in one day because Apple turned off third-party cookies. They lost more in market cap in one day than any company in stock market history. $236 billion gone in one day. Now, that's like, okay, well, that happened to Facebook. No, 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 no. That happened to marketers. They can no longer spend that money. They no longer have that targeting criteria. The crunch happened to the marketing leaders and the people deploying that spend. So yeah, it was bad for Facebook. I think we've all gone from like loving Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg's great, he's a hero, to Mark Zuckerberg's evil. We hate him. Like now everyone hates Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, except when we want to deploy ad dollars on Insta and Facebook, WhatsApp, wherever. Oh shoot, that's impacting our marketing budget. Like the cost per acquisition inherently goes up because there's less supply,
Yeah.
right? Is this not a moment to where we're like every partner person should be going across the aisle to like do partner marketing with their marketing counterparts? Because that second party data for the first time now is like, wait a second, we might actually really need that. That's the best source for us to do partner marketing.
It's such a fascinating transition we're sort of living through right now, because if you think about the power of this like programmatic partner data, and this is like not an advertisement for Crossbeam, just like the reality is that Crossbeam and the other players in our space, when you start to take that data and feed it into these other organizations, it is dramatically going to change how I think partner teams operate, because we become this like essential like data layer for marketing and customer success and sales to do their jobs better. And that's like I think the penny's going to drop sometime here in the next year, where it's like AEs are getting increasingly expensive to hire. It's rough trying to sell alone out in the marketplace. Like you got to co-sell with partners as much as you can. You can see CROs and VPs of sales starting to lean in on this. The best way to do that is to actually work with the partner team and have the data feed to tell you who you should be co-selling with. And the same thing for the customer success organization. So I think like right now, our entire lives as partner professionals has been like trying to get the attention of these other leaders around the business, and like kind of pleading for their assistance and collaborating with their partners. It's going to flip at some point here, where it's like, we can't do our jobs unless the partner team has partnerships, and that we can actually leverage those relationships and that data to do our jobs in sales, marketing, customer success. Like this is the future, I think, of how partnership teams are going to operate. And man, that is so exciting, because right now our jobs are really hard. They're very manual. There's a lot of human interaction, and that's going to change when we actually stitch together all these systems. And credit to like Alan Adler and some of the folks in the space that are like thinking about this like sort of like modern ecosystem, like ops, and all the ways to kind of stitch these tools together. Because I think this is going to change how we really do our jobs in partnerships.
Isaac, we almost made it a whole episode without Alan getting a plug. Almost.
He's a smart cookie. He really is.
No, we got some big stuff cooking with Alan.
I
So
love plugging him.
yeah, love plugging Alan.
This is something that like we live in this moment where partnerships, and there's like traditional channel partnerships, and there's all this infrastructure and tooling and things that were built to support that whole go-to-market model. And then you have this newer kind of go-to-market motion with like ISV to ISV partnering of companies the same size or slightly bigger or slightly smaller. And we don't have tooling for ourselves. Like this is from an entrepreneurial perspective, we're starting to see things like Partnered and PartnerFluent, and there's a bunch of these like newer companies that are emerging, specifically oriented around like how do ISVs partner with one another. And there's going to be a mountain of cash made as these companies actually take off, because they make our jobs better, because we've never had tooling for actually doing this motion before. So like I'm pumped, because you can kind of see this emerging. I'm sure Jared and Isaac, you guys see this too, where it's like new tooling, new ways to do things, better processes, and then you have all the demand of the departments around the partner team for the first time ever, like really wanting to work with us. Like it's a damn good time to be in partnerships.
It's the only good time to be in partnerships. I'll be honest. Like
There's
it went
there's
from
the promo clip right there, by the way. Chris just saying it's a damn good time to be in partnerships. That's the teaser.
Absolutely. Ella's taking notes. We actually have Ella on the Partner Hacker team who's sitting alongside us in producer mode. So this is like the first time we've actually done this. So she's taking notes on the side. So that's exciting. We actually have an audience now too. Like we're actually trying to do this more pro. That's definitely the promo clip. Chris, I want to go one layer deeper now into that kind of like that scale up phase and the infamous question that I'm sure lots of people get around um, this kind of standoff on like who builds the integration, right? So like we're talking tech to tech partnerships. Inherent in that should be that our product should A plus B equals C squared. And I say C squared because if it's just 1 + 1 = 2, it's trite. 1 + 1 = 3. Interesting, of course. Our product should be better together more than just like perfunctory. Um, what are some tips or tricks that you could share on that standoff of like you build or we build? Like I've encountered this with multiple companies that were like roughly the same size as me, and that's where things get weird. You're kind of like in this like, hey, we're in the sales engagement space, and we're like a Clary. So then you have like High Spot, or you have Sales Loft, or you have a lot of companies that are in the 500 to 800 employee or 1,000 employee range. It's like nothing ever gets done there. It's really hard to build an integration when everyone's kind of the same size. Who's building it? And there's this weird standoff of like they're offended if they want you to build it and vice versa, and all the way down to the bottom, right? If you're a 50-person company, well, maybe you shouldn't be integrating with another 50-person company. That is probably a bad idea, actually, in a lot of cases. I'd love to unpack this further. How to decide who builds first?
Yeah, I mean, we've been on this journey at Crossbeam. So like last year, we had to build a lot of the integrations. We did have some partners build, especially in environments where like there's just no feasible way for us to do it. Some of our PRM integrations are of that type where it's like they got to change how their product looks and works and stuff to ingest our data. Um, at some point, like, and this happened actually in the last sort of month or so, we now have way more tech partners wanting to build on top of us than we are actually investing in building integrations ourselves. And I think what happened was, we made enough investments into different categories, and we got enough, sort of conviction, as you said earlier, around like this use case does make people more more effective.
Well, you became a platform. I have to interrupt because you became a platform using Bob's own definition. The difference between a platform feature and a product feature is by virtue of you being in first place, the feature has more value than anyone else could copy, right? So let's say a competitor to Crossbeam launches the exact same feature. By virtue of you being in first place and having more nodes on the network, it has more value to me as a customer, right? So like inherently, I think that, by the way, that's like the most brilliant definition of platform I've ever heard. So that's why I like repeating it. I'm like, that's actually the definition of platform, is that you're in first place. You open up that opportunity. Maybe invert that, like looking back at the market, because not everyone has that platform opportunity, right? Where like your network is now the biggest, therefore people have to build on top of you. You've created like the next phase of like ecosystem partnership growth. Like Crossbeam did the thing that lots of companies don't know how to do. What about looking back at it as just another SaaS tool, MarTech, Sales Tech, you name it? How do
Yeah.
you encounter that issue, or how have you seen others do it? Because I'm sure a lot of people are coming to Crossbeam with this issue in mind.
This is what we did at Full Story was, we were not a platform per se, and it's my prior role before Crossbeam, and this is also why, like, to some extent, partnerships really needs to roll up to the CEO. Ultimately, is it's a strategic investment by the company to do ecosystems the right way, and if you get the CEO on board with that, or if you get enough executives on board with that, you'll make the right investments either with your own engineers to spend that first year or maybe even 2 years building more integrations to get enough momentum to show that like people are missing out if they don't have an integration with you, because their competitor is doing webinars and field events and AE to AE co-selling and blah 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 blah. But you got to make an investment up front to build that momentum. And this is where like I see a lot of new partner people getting stuck, is that they didn't realize that you got to have engineering on board. Like you cannot be running a tech partner program and needing to build integrations and not have a really strong alignment with your product leader and your engineering team, because whether you build it yourself or you go and buy an iPaaS solution like the Trays and Workatos and Pandiums of the world, there's still a heavy role for the engineering team and product team to like support you on that go to market motion. And you got to have some cash to actually build these things out, or at least the hours dedicated from the developers. So I think this is like, it's easy to fall into the trap as a new SaaS company. You might have a CEO that's never seen a fully fledged partner program running before, and they're like, hire a partner executive, get them in here, and then like, I want to see a bunch of integrations in a marketplace, and I want a bunch of source deals in a time horizon that's probably not realistic.
Right.
And that happens a lot. And this is why I think we see a lot of turnover in our space is people end up in a leadership role and they're like, I don't have the backing of my business to actually do what I need to do to build that momentum to then have things flip around where it's like, I got people wanting to build on top of us.
That would actually be a quick tangent, then back to your what you were talking about. That'd be an interesting report of how many heads of partnerships stayed, like kind of tenure over like a 2 or 3 year time horizon in like a hyper growth company. That'd be an interesting study.
I mean, we can see it through partnership leaders. There's a lot of people moving around in jobs because we have 800 plus people in the community, and we had stats on this for last year. I think like 30% of them changed jobs last year.
I bet it's even more this year. Life's too short to work for a CEO that doesn't care about partnerships. I'll say it right now.
100% right there.
Life's too short. Get the heck out of there. Ping me on LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn. If you're a partner leader that you need help, I get pinged all the time by people looking for like that talent. I'll help you out because life's too short to work for a CEO that doesn't understand partnerships. That's one of the ways, by the way, that we affect this change is that CEOs become terrified that we just like rip out their partner leaders because they don't care about partnerships. So like I'm happy to make that meme famous. Like life's too short to work for a CEO that doesn't understand partnerships. Ping me on LinkedIn. I'll help you get a new gig.
I literally just put in the Partner Hacker Daily that I was drafting, one of them for next week, a quote by Christina Cordova from her interview here. She said something like, if you work in partnerships, you better work at an organization that makes significant revenue from partnerships, because that's the only way that they're really going to value, the partnerships org, or something to that effect, that like, directly or indirectly, they better be making significant revenue out of partnerships, or you're not going to have a very fun time working in a partnerships role where you don't matter that much, or at least they perceive it that way. Life's too short.
I mean, to some extent, that's where that alignment with the CEO matters. Is like, even at Crossbeam, like today, we're. Oops, sorry guys, pardon me one second.
Good. We got little Samila joining the show.
Ethan, you want to say hi? Ethan, come say hi really quick.
We could get little man on the show. I got my little man outside. What's up?
Goodness.
We got Ethan. What's up, little Samila?
Ethan. This is a future partner manager right here.
What's going
Absolutely.
on? Look at that guy. Oh my gosh.
So how old's Ethan?
15 months, and he's got his Aussie passport on the way. That's why we're in Washington, D.C., and I'm in this lovely hotel room behind me here.
Amazing. Amazing. I have a 26-month-old right now, Adam, and then one on the way. So
I love it, man. That's super cool. It's it's an interesting, like, going back to your kind of comments around like not working for a CEO that doesn't get it. Like, I have even stronger sort of sentiments around this after like seeing now what it's like to work under a CEO that gets it. I mean, this is like, it's such a difference because you do get that bandwidth to be able to build the machine in essence, because you may not have the right strategy. Like when we go back to Isaac, your kind of comments earlier, like kind of growth hacking in the partner team and stuff, or partner hacking, it's very likely that you may make decisions that like, that doesn't work out. Like you launch a program that doesn't resonate as well, and you realize like, crap, we got to go over to tech partnerships instead of working on channels. And like, you got to give the partner executive or head of partnerships that ability to like have time to figure this out, because you're not going to strike out every single time and hit a home run. It's like, I think this is just like a learning curve to some extent that executives, the CEOs, have to learn and figure out. Is this is something that takes some testing to make sure that you find the right thing. Now, you can hire someone that spin cycle of like figuring out what's the right answer, what's the wrong answer gets a lot shorter. but you still got to give them the ability to like figure that stuff out without stressing them out to all in. Because partner people, I think, generally get very, very just burnt out because they're sort of like carrying the weight of
Yeah,
everything.
because going back to the crisis of conviction, and then other underlying kind of general statement is trust. I mean, if I call up someone in the space, like Isaac and I were in person last week, and there was a handful of people that we were talking about and doing deals with and doing partner stuff with. That is an investment that I've made over years of actually doing business with someone that mattered, and them judging me based on my track record. And then if I go and I want to spend that social currency, right, that trust, for someone that doesn't care about that, that's a big problem, because then I lose all of that trust with that person. So if I don't deliver for someone that I delivered for in the past, they're like, maybe Jared's a one-hit wonder, or like maybe he can never deliver. Like it's a problem. So partner people inherently are relationship people. If you're working for a CEO that doesn't care about you testing, and it's like, hey, look, that didn't work out, cut, kill. And it's like, oh shoot, I just left all of that social capital and that social currency on the table. Man, that sucks to start from scratch from, because then you go into the next gig and you're like, all right, I'm going to call my partner contacts that I just screwed over.
Yeah, it's funny, Jared. I think you were saying, we were talking about some of these things, and Ellis said, like, well, how are we going to pull that off? Like, what, why would we be able to get that done? And you said something like, oh, just a little small thing called like 15 years of legwork that I've put in, right? Like
No, literally, it was like, I was like, how are we going to do that? And I'm like, it's literally because I've been doing business with this person for 12 years.
Yeah.
So I call
right.
them, they know, and they're going to do it.
But okay,
Why?
so let me
Because I'm not
play.
going to, I've been a deliver. I have a track record of delivering with that person that no one else does. And that's that unique competitive advantage. And that's when I say life's too short to work for a CEO that doesn't care about partnerships, is like, you don't get to build those wins consecutively with people that matter in the long run.
Maybe we need to get a CEO on for an episode, on a separate episode on this topic, because I want there's like
The
a
next
devil
episode, actually. So, Mr. Brewster.
there's a devil's advocate component here too, because it's like, okay, what I'm hearing if I'm a CEO is, hey, look, partnerships is really complicated. You can't really measure it. It takes a really long time.
Right.
You just need to give me a big budget, a lot of time, and let me fail a lot, and eventually magic will happen. And then as a CEO, you're like, but how do I do the accountability part? How do I measure if it's working? How do I decide how much to invest? So there's a counter there that I'd love to hear, because it reminds me of the way people will talk about brand and marketing. They're like, you can't quantify it. You just got to give me a bunch of money and let me do magical creative stuff, and then people will feel good about us.
Well, I feel like that's a great a transition as we can make as possible, because I know we got to let Chris get back to his family. Is next week we have Rob Brewster on from GoForms, who was a VP, head of partnerships for multiple companies. So Salesforce, Twilio, Eloqua, and is now the CEO after being a partner leader, right? So he was head of partnerships at GoForms and now is the CEO. So I'm excited to have Rob on next week, and we'll get to unpack some of how like he got thrown into that role and was like, wait a second, I have to make sure this partnership stuff still works. But I think that's good segue, Isaac. I'll say that you did it on purpose.
Yeah, it was an accident. But we should, before we let Chris go, speaking of partner marketing, by the time this airs, we'll know who it was. But the Partner Hacker and Crossbeam little cross promo, giving a VIP experience to a younger person or earlier IC in the partnerships world, given a free plane ticket and hotel and ticket to Crossbeam. Pretty cool thing, pretty fun. And like I said, when this airs, we will know by then, I think, right, Jared? Who?
Yeah. So this
who won that?
Posted on LinkedIn this morning. Got like 5,000 hits already, so not bad. Got a couple people that are standing out in terms of nominations. Got some people that have gone through the Foster system as nominees, which is pretty amazing, right? Like having to kind of like go through like really, really hard stuff. Have people overseas. So posted a post this morning, but basically, yeah, we're sponsoring hotel, airfare, ticket, VIP experience. Excited to announce the winner next week. So we'll be live by the time this airs.
But you should still go to Supernode.
May 17th and 18th, Supernode in Philly, Crossbeam's first ever annual conference. Come meet Chris and get to geek out with him and many others like me. I'll be there. And then last one as well is April, if you're West Coast, April 27th and 28th is SaaS Connect in San Francisco. So I'll also be there. Isaac will be there. What else? I feel like those are the two major circuits. And then we got Catalyst that's happening. You guys are just teasing for August. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So super pumped, obviously, about Supernode in May. And then we, on the partnership leaders front, we have Catalyst, which is our first major user conference or just like member conference for partnership leaders. It's also open to the general partner community. It's bookended with a bunch of, like, in essence, ISVs hosting their partner summits around Catalyst. So we'll be announcing a bunch of these shortly, but imagine like bringing together all of your partners in Miami around this conference. So we're just going to end up with a grip load of partner people all in Miami at the same time, nighttime parties, boat party, all kinds of fun stuff. So between Philadelphia and Miami, I'm so excited to actually get back in person because, man, like it's been too long. Like we've been online for the last few years, and this it's time.
Especially for partner people. So we'll see you in person at all three events. I'll be at all three events. We will see you there. Chris, episode 50, Partner Up. So cheers
Honored, man.
to you and the family. Thank you for joining us from DC on the road. And Partner Up, we'll see you in episode 51. We're past that milestone.
Love it. Honored. Thank you, guys.
All right. See y'all next time.